Hey there, Sam Ashers, and welcome to the Spotlight. I'm Dave Stutz, and with us today we have Victor from Line 6. Victor, how are you, man?
Doing good, man.
That's awesome. Glad to have you. Super excited. What do you have for us today?
Yeah, glad to be here, man. We're pretty excited as well. We have a new member of the HELIX family from Line 6. This is HELIX LT.
That's awesome. I got to say, anytime I'm in the stores, anytime Line 6 comes up, it seems HELIX is synonymous with that brand now. Everyone wants to talk about it and hear about it. So what can you show us today?
Yeah, absolutely. HELIX has been a super exciting platform for us. It's our flagship processor, right? It's this whole new world of modeling, amp modeling, cabinet modeling, and effect modeling that we've got going on in the family. And HELIX LT is essentially our streamlined version of that processing.
Awesome. Okay, so this is the newest and the hottest.
This is the newest
Stripped
member
down
of the
a little
family.
bit.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So the idea is all the guys that want the processing that they've heard about now for a year and a half with HELIX,
Okay.
the floor unit and HELIX rack, we wanted to be able to give those guys the same quality sounds, the same level of flexibility, sort of in their signal routing, all the same controls, but just make it a little more affordable for these guys to jump into that world.
Okay.
So essentially, same DSP, same processing, it's just the hardware that's changed. So we've streamlined the in and out section a little bit, and we've removed the scribble strips. So we've got a couple things to go along with that specifically in HELIX LT, which we can dive into.
Okay, so we got all the same sounds, same processing, just a little bit different hardware, no more scribble strips, so it's a little tighter.
Right.
Okay, a little more affordable.
Exactly.
All right, awesome. So sure, yeah, let's go into what you wanted to take us into.
Yeah, so for anybody who's sort of familiar with HELIX, you'll probably recognize this section up here, just the interface, right? And we still have the same thing going on here where we get around navigation-wise using the joystick.
Oh, that's great.
Anything we want to highlight or pull up, we can always just touch in on the joystick to bring up a list of all the same exact effects that we have in the full-size HELIX.
I like it, keeping it simple.
But you'll notice that since we don't have the scribble strips down here, it's not exactly labeling what we have tied to each pedal.
Okay.
They're still color-coded here, and they're still touch-sensitive the same way we have on HELIX. So to simply edit something or to see what's on a pedal, all we do is touch the metal part of it.
That's cool.
And it brings up the edit menu here. And this
That's
is
really cool.
This should be nothing new for guys who have played with the HELIX before. This is very, very similar as far as that goes. So if you want a little more description of sort of what's happening on your pedal board, we have a new view mode here.
Okay.
I press the view button.
Nice.
Now we have performance view. So this is basically the scribble strips just being placed on your screen.
Nice. So they didn't go away. They just got placed somewhere else.
Exactly. So you have the same functionality of that where you
nice.
look down and you know exactly, like, this button is my 70s chorus pedal.
Gotcha.
Click it on, it highlights in the signal chain. If I ever want to dive back to a more edit-friendly view,
nice.
Go back to what we're sort of used to.
It's always really cool to see a product kind of get refined over the years. Like I know when HELIX came out, everyone was super excited. It was this amazing thing, and that excitement hasn't gone away. We've just taken it, and you guys have re-engineered it. You've taken all the same stuff that the original model had and just put it in different places. That's incredible, man. I love it.
Absolutely. And one of the cool things too, man, is I know guys that will sit there, because you can customize the scribble strips to say whatever it is you want to say. And
cool.
They'll spend hours coming up with whatever color scheme they want, and like whatever wording. And all that's still preserved. So if you have presets that are in your normal HELIX and you bring them onto HELIX LT, these will just read out the exact same way you had them programmed in the other one. So
anything you need to do to remind yourself that that's the sound I need to hit when the chorus hits, you can edit it. That's awesome. Very cool.
Just show a couple other presets and kind of what they look like laid out.
So these are presets we're going through?
So these are just things that I've set up.
Oh, these are your sets?
Yes.
Nice, okay.
There's
so highly customizable.
Yeah, exactly. So there's plenty of room to work with. There's 1,028 presets slots. They're organized throughout 8 different banks.
1,028 preset slots.
So you have plenty of things to mess with, right? So you have banks.
1,028 preset
Banks
slots.
1 through 32, and then presets A, B, C, D inside of each of those banks.
That's cool.
And they're organized in a way that if you want to have different set lists, is what we're calling them, it essentially gives you
that's cool.
separated
Nice.
preset lists. So if you want to have, your death metal band for the weekends has its own set list, which never shares the same presets that your church gig has, which never shares the same preset as your cover band, you can have them all organized by that.
I want to meet the guy that's got his death metal presets and then his church band presets. That's a cool guy. I want to hang out with that guy. All right, what else do we have? That's cool.
So like I was saying, you can fully customize the scribble strips. It's the same thing here in performance view. So if you feel like labeling silly things like my reverb and delay as my talent boost, I can have that. I can give it a pretty little purple color. If I want to do my gain staging as crunch versus face rip, you can pull that off as well. So it's
awesome.
And I didn't have to do any work on it. It's whatever presets I had on a previous or a different member of the HELIX family will port over into this seamlessly.
Great. So you're saying even if someone already has the original HELIX and say that's like their their studio Helix, and they're like, you know what, I just want something for the road. I'm going on the road in a month or so. You can augment your Helix experience. You can import that stuff into here and just keep going.
Exactly. It's all seamless as far as the presets go. It's the same.
That's awesome.
The same DSP, the same models, the same sound set. And what's cool about that too is as we continue to develop the Helix platform and new models get added in, new effects get added in with all these firmware updates we've been doing, that goes across the board. So it's not just the top of the line Helix rack and floor users. It's Helix LT will go right along with that.
All right, so there's no proprietary updates for those who have the bigger, badder board. Everyone gets it.
It simply is just a small difference in hardware.
Very cool. Very cool. What's next? What else can we get into with this thing?
So one of the more recent updates included a feature we call Snapshots.
Oh, cool.
What's really cool about that is essentially inside of a preset, we can set up all sorts of stuff. There's so much room for actual DSP and routing that I tend to set up most of my sounds inside of a single preset. Whereas before I was switching presets every time I wanted a different sound, right?
Oh, I see. Okay.
So for instance, I've got a clean sound sitting on one side.
Nice.
And without even changing the preset, all I'm doing is engaging a virtual AB box that goes to a second amp. That side has its own reverb and delay, the other side has its own effects going on. But the important thing is that any of those reverb or delay trails that are happening are preserved because I'm not changing presets, so the audio never gets cut.
Right.
So if I just jump to, I'm gonna make this really exaggerated.
Sure.
If I turn the feedback of that delay up quite a bit, you can hear that tailing off. When I switch back to my clean sound, there's no audio gap. It doesn't actually cut that off. So because we're staying in the same preset, it's instant loading, there's no lag, there's no audio cut. So it's really, really useful for guys that need to make switches live.
No, that's incredible because, coming from a multi-effects kind of board, most people, I would assume guitar players, like even I, you think for every sound you have to have a new preset. So to have like an A-B switch going to another amp in the same preset, that's huge. Yeah. That's really cool.
Each one can have its own independent effects. So you can basically set up just massive rigs and then choose which one you want to run through.
Incredible. Cool.
Another cool thing we've been doing with one of the more recent updates is we're really getting into this idea of using IRs, or impulse response files.
Okay.
It's essentially like a cabinet block, right?
Oh, sure.
We've teamed up with a guy, Dan Bull from 65 Amps, and he's actually giving out some of his IRs for free for Helix users.
That's cool.
So something
Generous.
you guys, yeah, really nice of the dude. And to me, one of the cool things that I'd like to show off is essentially using snapshots. Each snapshot can have a different IR.
Okay.
Which is something that we really couldn't pull off in real life, right? It involved us not only changing our channel or something, but also swapping out all the wiring for our cabinets and putting a new mic in front of it.
Right, I gotcha.
So here, the idea being that I can run from just a generic clean sound or actually I'm going to switch over to my view mode so I can see what's going on.
Absolutely.
If I press mode, I'll go into snapshots.
Nice.
So I've got a clean sound set up here on snapshot 5. If I jump to snapshot 1, it's a high gain thing, pretty dry. If I feel like adding in some reverb or some wetness to that gain sound, now snapshot 3. And then if I want to take it to another extreme, on snapshot 8 I've got it set up so I'm actually bypassing my amps. We can jump back to the view to kind of see I've muted out the amplifier block that's in there, and I've changed the IR to an acoustic IR.
Nice. Wow, huge. Nice.
So you can essentially think of the snapshots as 8 mini presets inside of a preset.
Nice. So that's awesome. Incredible.
Really cool. And I know that these presets I've been working on for a little while, they seem like a little more complicated, and I've got a lot more going on. But essentially, if you'd like, I could start from scratch. We could just kind of show how to build a preset and show how easy the interface is to work with.
Let's do it. I'd love to do it. So we have 1,028 preset blocks, right? That's what we said. And then inside of that, you can have various snapshots. You can trail off to different things. So I feel like you could never run out of space. I know technically you could, but
there's going to be someone out there who runs out of space, and he's going to call us out on it. But there's a lot of room to work with, without a doubt.
Yeah, let's build something. That'd be great.
We're just going to start from scratch. It's just a blank preset. And the idea here is you can see your signal chain represented from left to right, right? If I move using that little navigation joystick over to the input block, I can choose from all the various inputs, ins and outs I have on the back of Helix.
Great.
Same thing for the output block. And right now we're just going in through the guitar input and out through XLRs.
Nice.
But if I feel like using a Variax, I can plug that in and have it read from the Variax only.
Cool.
If I feel like using any of the effects loops that are built in, and there's 2 effects loops built into Helix LT.
Oh, wow.
Which is cool for bringing in external gear,
Right.
or if I just want more inputs and outputs.
Not that you need it, but you can.
Now there's some guys that just, a certain pedal or a certain external piece of gear is just part of their sound, and instead of us telling them like, no, you got to get rid of that if you want to use Helix, it's not, bring it over, we'll play, we'll play with it.
That's huge.
So we'll start off simply clicking in the joystick. It brings up our list of all the different types of effects.
Nice, very simple.
Drop-down menu.
Super simple.
And just to make things quick, I'm going to go to the amp plus cabinet block, and that'll give me the amp and cabinet together. It makes it a little easier or just quicker for setup, but I can separate them if I want to do that as well.
Nice.
And I'll just scroll down. We'll play around with one of the newer amp models. There we go, the Line 6 Litigator. And this is kind of a cool one. It's actually essentially just a fantasy amp. We modeled things, or I say we like I did anything.
Hey, no,
Line 6 has modeled
course.
things at this component level, right? So when they're building the amps, they've basically modeled out the tubes themselves. They've modeled out the wiring. They've modeled out, what each pot and capacitor is sort of doing.
Nice.
And then they just kind of build it digitally off these blueprints, right?
Okay.
And so that gives our sound engineers some flexibility in terms of just, hey, what would this sound like if I took this section from an amp and I pieced it together with this thing and then I kind of freestyled this little area?
Okay.
And so we end up with something like the Litigator, which is kind of a cool amp. So it's got a little bit of breakup on it.
Sure. That's great.
Cleans up a little bit, but it never gets pristine, which is kind of cool.
So it's like a hot tube kind of amp.
Yeah, just always a little bit pushed. It's
That's awesome.
A little sassy but classy kind of thing.
Nice, very cool.
So we'll start with
Litigator.
that. That's not a bad place to start. And if we feel like further editing anything, all of our parameters show up here on the bottom
full
of the screen.
EQ, presence knob.
If I press over the page menu, which is shown, I've got these little dots here saying I've got more parameters that I can get to.
Oh, gotcha.
Pressing the page left and right.
Bias options.
So now we've got our power amp control, which has a lot to do with how the amp feels and responds.
Sure.
And then the last page is the cabinet, so I can change out the microphone, I can change out the mic distance, or whatever it might be that I feel like adjusting.
Really cool. Which microphone you want? Awesome.
I tend to love the Royer 121, just because I can't afford a real one.
Right.
So we'll start by building up the rest of the patch here. I generally like to add some reverb, so I'll go to the end of the chain.
Who doesn't like reverb?
Reverb, it's makes me seem like I'm a better player than I am.
There you go. What's your reverb preference? You're a Hall guy?
I like Hall.
Okay.
I like Halls.
Hall's cool.
I tend to use Halls and Springs. Those are my two.
There you go. Beautiful.
So just by selecting it, it's already in the chain. I can, of course, adjust all the parameters I feel like adjusting.
Subtle reverb.
Now, what's cool is if I feel like adding that reverb to a pedal down here to actually turn it on and off the way I would like a stomp box, it's done the same way we've come to learn with the other Helix units. So I just touch and hold a knob, tell it OK, and now I've got my reverb assigned to a foot switch.
Nice.
So super quick, super seamless.
Very easy.
Just
nice.
touch and hold, hit OK, and you're good to go.
Super fly on the go. Nice.
Same thing I'm going to continue to add. With that one, it was a reverb. I knew I wanted it towards the end of the chain. But say I'm just playing around in a generic spot and I grab a distortion block. For whatever reason, it starts behind my amplifier. And that's usually not an accepted way to do things with distortions, right? But I can always just pick things up and move it around freely using the action button.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So I'm not stuck with the configuration I start with. I can freestyle the signal chain.
Right.
And then same idea, I'm going to add it to a foot switch down here. If I ever decide that I don't want it on that foot switch, I can, again, freestyle this as well and just move things around and fully customize both sides of it, both the signal flow and the control of that.
Very cool. Super easy, super quick.
Then
love it.
I'll just add a couple more things in. Grab a little delay.
Delay.
Now this is a cool thing too, and this is when we're talking about like just Helix in general, the amount of flexibility and routing you have on it is something we've never pulled off before, where each one of these paths can be split. You can run up to 4 separate stereo paths. So 4 separate inputs, 4 separate outputs if you want to. I think the more practical way to do it that most people use these for is if I use the action button to pick up an effect block and I move it up or down, it will split to parallel.
Oh, cool.
So I can actually, mix effects so they're not kind of running into each other. My delay is no longer bothering my reverb, just kind of kept out of the way. And then I'll go ahead and assign that to a foot switch as well. So in a matter of seconds.
We've built a nice, lush rich sound in seconds. Just super easy.
Super easy to pull
quick.
off. To do some more complicated stuff, it's actually made very, very easy on HELIX just because the interface is super intuitive, and the whole touch sensitive thing gives you a lot of easy use and quick navigation. So if I jump to something like my reverb and I want to tie a parameter to an expression pedal control,
Okay.
it's done super simply, right? So I just choose, I'll just do mix for now. I'm going to tell it to learn a control, and either on the onboard expression or an external,
Okay.
simply by moving that, that's now
Right.
controlling the mix. I
Cool.
can set my minimum, maximum values. And then if I jump back to my home view, you can see it's now labeled in white saying something's controlling it, right?
Here, you want to play? I'll work the pedal a little bit. Nice. Really cool.
And so we can actually do that with multiple parameters. You can do up to 64 of them tied to a single switch.
Wow.
Or split up amongst different switches in your preset. So tons of control and sort of flexibility in your tone.
Wow. So you could totally dial in a huge growl into like a lead if you wanted to, just whatever you want.
Check it out. So if I wanted to take that delay pedal, or sorry, distortion pedal I have set up in
Okay.
front, I'm gonna, again, just assign it by, or just select it by touching the knob. And then I'll take the gain of that and I'll tie that to the other expression pedal. And so now I
You
can
can
go.
already hear it a little bit activating. Nice.
So again, if you want to just play around with that, well, I just strum. I think a more practical way to do it, right? Because as I'm bringing that gain in and out, the level's changing. So if I want to have the actual level of that pedal
Okay.
on the same exact controller, but just working in opposite, you can do that too. So as the gain goes up, the level gets pulled down.
Wow. That's very cool.
Go ahead. Oh, I think we might need a little more on the other side. If I ever feel like it's not exactly what I wanted, I can just press and hold it again,
Okay.
and then just change my values.
Nice. Right, so as your gain goes up, your level goes down so that you don't just tear the roof off. Very cool. That's incredible that you can do that. I mean, you can see the gain rising and the level shrinking.
So I
Awesome.
can do that, crisscross the parameters any direction I feel like going, change the
Very
sweep
cool,
of the
man.
values, and it's all done in a matter of seconds. Like that sort of complicated control usually takes quite a bit to set up.
Oh
and
yeah.
sitting there reading a
And
manual
you did it
for
in
hours.
seconds.
So yeah, it's
Seconds.
as deep and complex as you can get with this, and you can definitely pull off a lot of crazy stuff.
Right.
90 to 95% of all the tone writing and sort of patch creation you're doing, you can learn in about 5 minutes. So it's
Wow.
super, super easy interface,
Very
and I think
cool.
that goes a long way.
Yeah, I got to say, I've sat there with customers before and really tried to dive into various pedal boards and multi-effects, and sometimes you got to crack the manual. It can be tough, it can be daunting, but this one seems like it's very easy to jump into.
Yeah,
It's great.
I think it's been a huge plus that just anything that you think you kind of want to set up, you just kind of sort of like, how would I do that with real pedals and real amps? It's like, oh, I would connect this to this, I would put this in this order. It's done the
Right.
same way here. Like, how would I do that? Oh, I just set it up in this order. How would I tie that controller to it? Oh, I hit the learn controller button. So it's
Nice.
all set
So
up
very,
to kind of get
very
it on.
intuitive, idiomatic, where you think you would imagine things. That's that's where they are.
Absolutely.
So Victor, what else can we talk about?
So I guess if we're talking about the HELIX LT specifically, we could talk about its new section of I/O.
Okay.
So again, it's a streamlined version of what we had on HELIX. So on the back, if you guys can get a view of it, we've got what we do expect, our guitar
Definitely
in.
check it out.
We've got our 1/4-inch outputs. We've got our XLR outputs.
Right.
This handy little guy over here that I actually got plugged into the external expression pedal right now
Okay.
pulls double duty, and that is our external amp controller. So
Oh wow.
for guys that want to use this specifically as an effects-only unit, they can still use their physical amps, their tube heads, and have HELIX take care of the foot switching on that.
Wow, that's very cool.
And then as soon as I unplug that external expression pedal, you'll notice the light went from red to green, EXP1 to EXP2.
Right.
The onboard one will take care of both sides of it.
Oh,
it's just if you
great.
prefer to have them separate, we give you that option as well.
That's very cool.
So,
Awesome.
and it's just done by simply toe clicking over. If I have something set up for it, I toe click over.
Right.
Sure,
Sure. That makes sense.
The other I/O that's really cool on this, again, is the 2 external effects loops.
Okay.
And that's for guys that have pedals that you still want to use, you still want to bring into the HELIX world. And you do that essentially the same way you would an internal effect, right?
Right.
And so I can just go somewhere in my signal chain, press the navigation joystick in. I'm going to scroll down until I see the ins and outs section, the send and returns.
Sure. Yeah.
And I can run it in mono or stereo, and I'll just select effects loop 1. I'll do the same thing where I assign it to a foot pedal by just touching and holding, hit OK, and now that's bringing my external gear in and out of the signal chain.
Oh, cool.
I can place it wherever I want in the DSP, and one of the cool things with it too is most stop box style or most analog pedals don't have a trails feature for ambient reverbs and delays.
Right.
So when you turn that effect off, it's just off, right? With this, if I feel like having the output of that effects loop continue on and just cut the input, I can do that as well.
Wow.
So a little more
incredible.
control for stuff that you already have.
Yeah, absolutely. Just anything you want. That's great.
Then continuing down, we've also got, I mentioned that it's got the connection for Variax. So the VDI interface connection that we deal with our Variax guitars lets our instruments and the HELIX itself sort of talk back and forth, right? And so some of the cool things you can do with that is per preset or even per snapshot, you can have HELIX tell the Variax to change its model, to change its tuning.
Oh, wow.
And so just as you tag a single button, all your amps and effects swap out, your instrument changes, right? Your tuning changes if you wanted to.
Man, that's
And then
incredible.
there's also the communication from the guitar to HELIX, which means I can use my volume pot and my tone knob as sort of extra expression pedals and control parameters inside of HELIX.
There's no better time to be a guitar player, man.
Just
this is crazy.
toys
Everything
being fun,
at your
man.
fingertips.
Science you can play with.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then continuing with the hardware, the other ins and outs that we'd expect to see on the back, we have output for headphones, guys that want to keep the family happy and practice quietly at night.
Sure.
We've got you covered there. There's also the digital out for AES EBU, and there's a USB connection for updates and use with HELIX Editor.
Nice. Okay. So you can get under the hood a little bit, change some stuff around.
And that's the idea. It's essentially the interface on this is so easy to get. I actually prefer working on the units themselves. It's just you simply touch something, you edit it. It's all done super quickly. And for guys that are just used to tweaking pedals, you're really right at home on this.
Yeah.
But if you feel like you work better with that workflow of having a computer screen in front of you, you just want to edit it that way. The editor is fully capable. Everything you can do on the board, you can do on the editor, and vice versa.
Okay.
I think the only thing that you really can do quicker on the editor is type things out. So naming your presets or patches or renaming your snapshots or the scribble strips.
But you can still name that stuff here on the board too?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. And if I run into Command Center, anything is customizable. If I want to change what any of these foot switch show, I just dive in there.
There you go. Okay.
So yeah, it takes a little more movement
across
across
the knob, but
it's all
still
there.
easy, very intuitive. Nice. Awesome. Victor, thank you so much for being here, man. We really appreciate it. Thank you for taking us through the HELIX. I know that with all the stuff we covered today, there's still so much more to discover, but we'll leave that to you guys. Once again, I'm Dave Stutz. This is Victor from Line 6. Check out the HELIX and more great Line 6 products at Sam Ash. Thanks for joining us in the spotlight. Victor, play us out.